All right, so we are going to get started today. Again, thanks for joining. My name is Will Henry. I'm the Senior Manager of Account Management for the Social Tables Business Unit of Cvent. For those of you who don't know, Social Tables was acquired in October of 2018. We'll get into a little bit more about what that means for the current customers that are on the call today. Thanks for joining us. So today's agenda. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about what's changing in group business. We'll talk a little bit about how, based on those changes, what we can do to sell to planners in a better way, a different way, how we should respond to the changes we see in group. Then we'll talk a little bit about our event sales solution and the presentation layer view of social tables. After that, we'll spend a little time talking about the right way to promote online through some case studies and outside of the industry things we're seeing that we think are relevant for the hospitality industry to adopt. And the last thing we'll do is talk a little bit about the top ways to optimize group sales online and why that's important. By the way, we are monitoring the chat, so if you can't hear me or want me to repeat something, please let me know. We'll answer questions as they come up during the webinar. And we'll also be sending this out to everyone who attended today. So keep that in mind. If you feel like you need to take notes or want to remember something, that's fine, but I will be sending out the deck at the end of the call. And if you have any questions, I'm going to give my email at the end, but any general information about products or the information we share, feel free to email us at hello@socialtables.com. Now let's jump in. A little bit about Social Tables. Founded in 2011, we have about 5,500 customers. We have a 95% customer retention rate. So for those of you on the call that are customers, thank you so much for your business. I manage the team that oversees your annual renewals. And we really have enjoyed partnering with you over the last 8 years. And we've been able to grow our customer base significantly. All in all, the customers in our profile, they create about 100,000 events a month in the tool. And that's a snapshot of our office there in the background. So let's talk a little bit about Cvent. Cvent acquired Social Tables in October of 2018. Super exciting. For me, it was a very exciting time having been with the company for the last 5 years. One of the things that I'm the most excited about is our access to more resources. We'll be able to innovate faster. We'll be able to strengthen specifically our client services team. So if you think about, for those of you who've gone through our onboarding process, the creation of your floor plans, et cetera, there's some really exciting things to come. I'll give you a little teaser. Photoreal 3D, it's a thing and it's happening soon. We won't talk about it on this call, but if you are a current customer, make sure to ask your account manager about it. It's legit. And now, finally, we're a part of a connected portfolio with many best-in-class solutions, both on the supply side and the buy side. For those of you that are familiar with Cvent, they have about 90,000 active planners submitting RFPs through the Cvent Supplier Network. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means for our customers in a little bit. So getting to the main point of today, what's changing in group business? There's a lot happening here. First and foremost, group business in 2019, the projections are solid. So according to American Express Meetings and Events, we'll see about a 1% growth across all major event types. So that's everything from like customer advisory boards to trade shows. But on the other side of the coin, planners are a little bit more cost conscious in 2019. And there's a couple reasons why. You probably are familiar with the reasons why this is happening. So the bottom line here, the takeaway is that although there are more events, which is good, planners are paying a little bit more attention to the bottom line, trying to save time, trying to save money. And as a result, we've seen some changes in planner behavior over the last year. So the most notable change has been the move to online sourcing. We have now access to some extensive Cvent research. A stunning 67% of the buyer's journey is now conducted digitally. And it's a pretty big change to think about from even 5 years ago. Beyond that, we did a study of our own and found that 77% of planners begin researching online before ever contacting a sales team at a venue or a hotel. And you can see there, I skipped ahead a little too soon, that online sourcing makes up for about 38% of RFP volume. And by the way, the sources for all these slides are included in the links on the bottom right-hand corner, so you can click through those when we send out the deck after today's webinar. All right, so plug on the Cvent Supplier Network, which I'm sure you are all familiar with. We see that growth in online sourcing reflected in the very, very, very fast-paced growth in the Cvent Supplier Network, right? So you can see to the chart on the right, the value of group RFPs in the CSN has increased to just over 16 billion annually, which is crazy. It's in the last 8 years, the RFP value has increased nearly sevenfold. And I mentioned on the previous slide that in 2018 alone, there were about 92,000 unique planners using the Supplier Network. These numbers will continue to rise, and really the point here is that there's been a significant shift of planners to digital media and using, online portals to start planning their events. And that's also exacerbated by the fact that for the first time in history, the majority of planners fit into the millennial category, which is outlined here on the right. So again, the move online is really driven by that influx of millennial planners, and they're viewing sourcing more like online shopping than a traditional negotiation. And that's a big change from the way some of our sales teams have been deployed in the past. So take a look at some research from Cvent here. Now that millennial planners they're 50% more likely to say that social media and things like blogs highly influence their decision to take a venue evaluation seriously compared to previous generations. And 25 of those millennial planners are more likely than older generations to report that negotiations are the most difficult or most stressful part of sourcing a venue. And we put that in here because it's something they tend to try to avoid, which also drives them to seek out online channels to communicate, for better or for worse. And these professionals prefer a transactional experience as it saves them time and boosts their bottom line. These are people who grew up with the internet, and as digital natives, they're a little bit more familiar with transactional types of interactions that are occurring over the web. So we also did a little research on the information that planners need to see in order to contact a venue. So this is a DMAI survey. Modern planners are looking for specific information online before making a sourcing decision. The top 10 are below. I'm not going to read them all, but some of these are familiar and some of these may surprise you. At Social Tables, when we saw number 1, we were like, oh, maps with hotels, venues, and attractions. We have some of that information. This is very interesting. And that informed our product roadmap over the course of the last year. So when it comes to projecting demand growth in 2019, we've touched on this a little bit already, but according to American Express Meetings and Events, we do see a healthy bit of growth in group demand in 2019, specifically for mid-tier hotels, non-traditional event spaces coming in just behind, in luxury. Now, that being said, competition is rapidly heating up in these segments, and particularly in metro areas. So despite the growth and the shifting preferences among millennial planners, the thing that we've really noticed in our research is that online sales enablement and lead capture remains pretty significantly untapped in this arms race to have, everyone's built it. There's a lot of new coming online. It could feel crowded, yet we haven't seen any big swings in making contacting properties that start off with a digital search a little bit easier. So, as a venue or as a hotel, what can you do to get better at selling to these planners? Well, an integral part of our event sales solution is what we call the presentation layer of Social Tables. So I know I'm looking at the names and email handles on the attendee list right now, and I'm seeing some customers. So you may be familiar with some of the images you're seeing on the GIF that is playing on the right-hand side. The presentation layer is basically the best of Social Tables diagram, married with a few pieces of marketing collateral, pictures, room descriptions, visual capacity charts that help planners envision their event at your venue without having to submit an RFP and get a response. So think of it this way, allowing planners to visualize the diagram in in 2D form before they even ever reach out. This enables planners to easily submit RFIs to your sales team because they have a pretty clear idea of what's possible. And the other nice thing about the social tables presentation layer is that it's a widget at its core. So that means that it can go anywhere. We'll talk a little bit about what some of our most successful customers have done in the past. It's a pretty flexible tool, and with the presentation layer, venues have almost unlimited options for getting their floor plans in front of prospective clients. So this can be embedded directly on your website. And most of the major brands have ways for handling this, whether it's linking to or embedding in. We can also link from any lead source, such as Wedding Wire. I mean, there's unlimited opportunity. Anywhere where you have a redirect to a PDF of your floor plans, something like this that's searchable and intuitive could replace that. And we think, and we've seen an increase, pretty significant increase in outreach as a result of replacing static collateral with a way that lets planners communicate with you without having to send a full-blown RFP. Particularly potent for types of business like corporate social that may not ever fill out an RFP. So bottom line, the social tables presentation layer functions like an interactive capacity chart that venues can use to capture business online. And sharing is super easy. So conventional meetings and event web pages are a little hard to share with the client to get them to the right place. Copy and pasting to a link can't get across the full story sometimes, which is why we came up with the concept of deep linking for our presentation layer. So think of it this way. You could pre-search your space. If you know the planner in question is looking for an event for 40 or maybe 140, and you know it's a reception style event, you could use the searching parameters on the top left to tell social tables presentation layer what you think your customer wants to see and highlight some rooms that you think may work. And then you can use the social tables deep linking functionality to send them the pre-sorted rooms so that they're only seeing what's relevant to them. And although it is embeddable on a website or able to be linked from a website, it also functions as a URL. So if you send it to someone as a link in an email, they'll be able to click on it and open it in a new window in any browser. Another thing that really gets me excited about this tool is that there's a whole untapped market out there of what we like to call occasional or accidental planners that probably aren't sitting in most people's, CI or Envision or, in your Delphi instance. They're not in your sales and catering funnel because they're not planners by trade. So these are executive assistants, sometimes administrators, and they're planning sales kickoffs, they're planning customer happy hours. They may be attached to, 4 to 6 room nights, and they don't know necessarily to use a professional sourcing platform. They don't know that an RFP is typically how this information gets across to hotels. And so they're trying to figure out how best to communicate with properties. And that's been about 65% of what we've seen come through this tool. So because the RFI tool is it's simple, it's fast, and it doesn't require being an industry expert to fill out, we've seen quite a bit of traction on what we call those, accidental or non-often planners. And that's really delivered quite the ROI to the customers that have gone live with this, because they've been able to grow relationships with people that weren't in their existing funnel before, which has been, we're really happy that we've been able to do that for the customers who've gone live with this thus far. Which, speaking of millennials, speaking of people who are always on the go, like many meeting planners that we sell to are, it's not just that buying and sourcing, it's moving online. It's also moving specifically to cell phones and tablets. So some research according to Google today, 48% of mobile users in the US are comfortable researching, planning, and booking an entire trip to a new travel destination using only their smartphone. So that's on the transient side, but as many things are in our industry, transient's a little bit ahead of where group is, and we expect a fast follow. So people who have a negative experience on mobile following the same thread are 62% less likely to purchase from that brand in the future than if they've had a positive mobile experience. Oftentimes, it's worth noting people interact with content for the first time on mobile and move to a desktop environment after. The bottom line here is without a true mobile solution for lead capture and sales enablement, you could be damaging relationships with as many as half of potential planners before your sales team even gets a chance to talk to them. Now, what you're seeing here on the right is a screen capture of how our social tables presentation layer works seamlessly on a device as small as an iPhone. So you can still source, search, view those visual capacity charts along with a room description and submit a request all from your phone. This would not be possible or practical with a traditional RFP form. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of show you how the presentation layer reacts in real time to a mobile style environment. So what you're seeing right here in the middle screen is our office inside of a presentation layer widget being condensed and showing you how a planner would work through, clicking on a room, then picking, a layout that works, et cetera, et cetera. So what kind of results could you expect if you went live with the social tables presentation layer? Well, of course, it does depend a little bit on where you are and the general RFP volume for that market. So let's talk about a marquee property in a tier 1 city. This is a current customer. We whitewashed the name, but the data stays the same. So they are experiencing about 116 planner sessions a month. What is a session? A session is a planner doing anything more than just landing on the instance. So think about like sorting the floor plans based on attendee count. Planners can also download the floor plans and forward them on to the ultimate decision maker. Maybe they pick a few rooms by selecting them that they think will work. Download those to get buy-in from a colleague. That would be the floor plan downloads. And then the average marquee property in a tier 1 city has about 13 direct RFI submissions per month. I'll show you the form here in a little bit so you can get a sense of what's coming through. This particular property is boutique, upper upscale with probably 100 plus guest rooms. And one of the things they did that was so smart is they took a 3-pronged approach to achieving success with their sales solution presentation layer. First is that they leverage the social tables presentation layer to bring interactive floor plans and the RFI tools to the planners visiting their website. The second thing they did is they didn't stop there. So because when we deliver this tool to properties, it's basically a link and some source code, and you can put it anywhere you want. So the next thing that they did is they put it on their chains proprietary groups and meetings channel. So now people are hitting it from 2 different places. If you come to their direct channel, you're hitting it. They weren't super sure how many professional planners they were getting on their direct channel. So they also wanted it to be in a place where they felt like there would be more planners hitting it on a regular basis, which is why they installed it on their chain's G&M website. And they also took advantage of some of the content we generated from them to update their Cvent supplier network, which helped them differentiate themselves when people were searching for properties in their market. I mentioned earlier that this can be embedded or linked to anywhere where you have content linked from currently. So think about if you have, if you have a Cvent supplier network listing now and you currently have the panel that allows you to link to your static floor plans. Well, instead of dropping a link to static PDFs from your supplier network listing, you could put the social tables presentation layer there instead. So here is a larger chain that has gone through onboarding with social tables. Now, this is a different style of property. These are mostly suburban and or I would say regionally located. They're oftentimes in rural areas, but they're destinations in and of themselves. So this group of 47 properties is owned by a major luxury brand. They're seeing a little bit of a different response, but the ROI is still there because they receive less RFIs and RFPs in general. So they're seeing about 5 per property per month. And that's averaging about $60,000 in event spend. That doesn't include room nights. That's sometimes come through, not always, about 50% of the time. And it's about 22x the ROI that the brand made the investment in. And of course, they do have some more marquee properties in major city centers that see quite a bit more than the 5, but this is an average across the portfolio. Also note that the real RFI examples we included here, neither of those are professional planners by trade. Awesome. So we've talked about the properties that are using it. Let's talk about what kind of planners have been interacting with the presentation layer. So if you look at the Fortune 50, the biggest 50 companies in the Fortune 500, about 3/4 of them are using or have used a presentation layer to source event space with Social Tables customers. So specifically 5 out of 10 in finance, 3 out of 4 in sports, and so on and so forth. And to be honest, when we created the tool, we really were expecting predominantly social. We were expecting predominantly corporate social. And so we were very surprised to see that, even some of the largest planning teams in the world are still craving an experience where they're not as burdened by a full-blown RFP form, especially since that's not the bulk of the events they plan. A lot of it's smaller, 40 to 60. The lead time is less, and it's less heavy on rooms, more heavy on meeting an event or F&B. We've also seen a particularly interesting spike in activity with properties who have included their restaurant space in the Social Tables presentation layer instance. It's something to keep in mind if you are known for F&B within your portfolio or at your property. So gone are the days where capacity charts are cutting it and menus on our websites are working to drive leads. I think one of the things that has fundamentally changed in the industry, and we see this, in our day-to-day lives all the time with the people who advertise to us as consumers, is that showing is better than telling. Think about, and sometimes it's honestly a little creepy, how specifically tailored to you Instagram ads are, or things that are showing up on the sidebar of your Facebook. And this is becoming more and more common because data is showing every company that social media is making its way into the hospitality industry and fast. So articles, with visual content, such as infographics or photos, get 94% more traffic than text. I mean, I see that on the things that I click on LinkedIn all the time. Like if it's an interesting picture of a property, I'm much more inclined to start clicking on it before I've even read the helper text below. Tweets with images, again, 94% more likely to be retweeted than tweets without. And then there's a general fact that visuals are processed 60,000 times faster than text, which means you can paint a picture for your audience much faster with an actual picture. Finally, venues like media sources see more engagement with visually exciting media, and that's why we're so excited about showing you guys the Social Tables presentation layer today. So, how to get smarter about site visits and sales strategy. Think about this. The average planner goes on roughly 21 site visits per year. That's a little bit more. That's almost 2 a month. And that comes out to more than 100 hours of evaluation and travel. So despite this, only about 50% of site visits result in a closed deal. That does return a lot of wasted time and travel for the planner. We see our savviest customers get the most out of site visits by setting the tone before the planner arrives via sharing high quality images and space specs online. Like we mentioned, the presentation layer at its core is a shareable link. So having something that is dynamic to share with a planner before and after a site visit really helps you stand apart when your comp set is sending, one-pagers and static images with a whole bunch of text. It also lets you spend less time in person introducing your planners to these spaces because they've probably already self-selected a few that they think are going to work best for them. And some final tips. Keep it consistent. It's really easy for online branding to get out of control fast. So we think it's important for you guys to work to ensure all teams are sharing the same message with standardized content. That was one of the driving factors behind our decision to allow our customers to embed and link the presentation layer from anywhere on their website. Communicating visually is becoming more and more important as digital media starts taking over. Share all the details up front so you can focus on turning the site visit into a mini event on its own. The less time we have to spend wandering from meeting room to meeting room, the better. Third, remember that data is your diplomat. That's actually one of our company's core values here at ST. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all solution to online sales enablement. So pay attention to what the data is telling you. We use Google Analytics. You can also embed Google Analytics if you already have it on your presentation layer instance to get a better understanding of what's happening there. And it's important to be mobile first. We talked a little bit about how something like 48% of people are interacting with digital media content for the first time on their phones. So making sure you're putting your best foot forward as people are in the very earliest of stages in sourcing is super important. And you guys were a great audience. I got through this in record time. I'm going to hang out on the line. If anyone wants to ask me questions, please let me know. If you're interested in learning more, like I mentioned, I've been at Social Tables for 5 years, so I'm somewhat of a guru myself. I would be happy to chat with you or connect you with the right person if you want to learn more about the Social Tables presentation layer. My email is here. It's whenry@socialtables.com. And if you are a current customer that works with our account management team, then you probably work with someone on my team. So if you email me and you're not sure who they are, I can definitely send you in the right direction. Now, Nick, keep me honest here. I don't think we have any questions.
I don't think we have any questions either.
Okay. So for those of you that joined us, thank you so much. Happy last day of the month for those of you in sales. I know that I'll be running back to my inbox to see what's in there in just a moment. Bye, guys. Have a good one. Thanks for coming. All right, everyone, I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much for joining. Again, my email is listed here, whenry@socialtables.com. Happy to chat with you if you would like to learn more. Have a great rest of your week.